Okay, here's a quick video on show you how to use a protractor to measure angles. Before I show you the protractor, let's make sure that we understand angle measure here. So what I have here is just a little app of a rotated point that I used in the previous video, and I have my little slider, remember, that changes variable the angle measure. Now, do we want to rotate, in a clockwise direction, like this, so to speak, or do we want to rotate in a counterclockwise direction, like this? And direction doesn't matter. When we talk measure, how big of an angle is this? Okay, how big did it open up? Let's put a numerical value to it, a number, right? So direction doesn't matter if A rotated to A prime or A prime rotated to A. We don't care when it comes to measure. That's why we use the sign, make it positive or negative to denote direction. But the measure itself, we just use a protractor for to measure it, right? So let's think first of all, let's open up in a clockwise direction. So when you do that, when we start with an angle, you have to have a starting side, right? Like a point and a center point in that segment showing that distance, right? So this is like a side of an angle. Okay, so when we rotate in a clockwise direction, notice we start on this side, and as we open up, we open from that original side, right? So we're at like 0 degree rotation. It hasn't even rotated yet, to now where we're rotating some angle measure, right? Okay, so that's important to understand when we talk about a protractor. Okay, so the starting side and what we can consider to be the terminal side or the stopping side. Okay, now if we're going to rotate in a counterclockwise direction, we still have our starting side. Maybe it's right here now, but now I'm going to rotate in a counterclockwise direction. So we have the 0 degree. Now it's opening up in a counterclockwise direction. Okay. So that's important to understand when we talk about angles and using a protractor, because how do we use this protractor here to measure angles? All right. So if you are confused on how to use a protractor, please don't feel bad, because most of my students need a refresher on this anyways. Okay, so what we got here is this angle. I got two angles actually that we're going to measure. Oops, I'm going to put these two together real quick. Okay, so I can move it around. So I'm going to measure this angle here and this angle that we've been looking at in the previous video. Okay, how big, since that last video here, like we're talking about the measure of angle B. How big is that? So because I'm talking about the measure, this little m, it denotes, I want to know how big it is in angle in degrees here. So now the protractor, we have to determine whether we want one of the sides to be our starting side. So maybe like the angle started from this side BC here, and it opened up in a counterclockwise direction for C to rotate all the way to A. So if you think about the protractor, you notice that you have some numbers on the inside that going from right to left are opening up, going from 0, 10, 20, opening up all the way to 180. So that would be like a rotation or an angle that's opening up in a counterclockwise direction. We would use those numbers, right? Now if A was going to rotate to C, right, open this way in a clockwise direction, then we would want to use these angles or these values on the outside to measure an angle that opens up in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, now on the protractor right in the middle here, we got some nice symmetry going on, right? Nice reflections along this 90-degree line. We can fold it in half. Okay, so this little crotch point here, sorry, I call it a little crotch, where the 90-degree line meets the 0 line down here, makes a little T here. That's going to be where the vertex goes of our angle. Okay, now if I set up my protractor so that my 0 degree is on this line right here, right? Starting at 0 degree, that means that this is going to be my starting side, and we're going to rotate all the way here to A over here, right? So I want to know what this angle measure is. So it's opened up already. We don't know exactly yet, but we know it's opened up 10, 20, all the way up to 130, plus a little bit more. And I want to know what that is. Now, if I want to use my protractor and say, for example, started on this side, Okay, so I'm going to put my vertex right there in the crotch of my protractor. But now I'm putting this side on my bottom line, which is the 0 degree. We always start at 0 degrees, right? And now I'm going to open up in a clockwise direction. So I'm going to use these numbers that open up in the clockwise direction here. And notice it's over 130 degrees. Still that same difference. We don't care what direction. We just want to know how big it is, okay? Now, sometimes our protractor is bigger than our little segments that we see, right? And this is why in geometry you hear the terms called rays, because rays take segments and lines and segments and extend them in a direction, right? So what I have is a ray, okay, that is going to just extend this side length. So all a ray does is show us this linear path if we were to extend that segment. Same deal here. I'm going to extend this side. And actually, we can think about angles as being two rays that share a starting point, right? Like the vertex point here. So now that I have that extension here, I'm going to move my protractor back on here. Got my vertex right here in the crotch of my protractor. I got my one side going along the bottom line of my protractor being 0 degrees. Okay, 0 degrees. I'm going to make it perfect here. Now we can see, because I extended this segment with a ray, right, going from a point and just extending in one direction, then we can see that this angle measure actually looks like it's 130, and it looks like 131, just over 130. So we know that the measure of angle B is 130 degrees. We don't care about direction. Okay, so that's how we can use our protractor to measure angles. I'm going to measure this angle real quick just to make sure that you understood that. I'm going to extend the sides again with my ray tool here, so I'm just going to extend. That way I know right now that my protractor will be big enough, or I'm hoping it will be. Okay, so now I'm going to take my protractor, and I'm going to rotate this so that I can get, well, maybe I'll just put the vertex here and rotate this so that one of my sides on that horizontal line. So notice this side's on my 0 degree now, so it's opening up in a clockwise direction. So we're opening up 10, 20, almost 30 degrees. Looks like it's going to be 29 degrees. So the measure of this angle right here is going to be 29 degrees. So that's how we use a protractor to measure angles.